Now here's a lecture which I recommend that you do not skip in this module, because I'm going to show you a different way of getting a value out of such an input element. Thus far, we're listening to the input event, and therefore with every keystroke, save input is fired, and in the save input method, I in the end just save the current value of the input to the current user input data property, so that we can eventually use that property later to assign the entered value to our message. Alternatively, as you learned before, we could also use vModel and bind that to our current user input property like this. That is also something you learned about in the course before. Then we can omit this input binding here. But whatever approach we use, we basically log what the user enters with every keystroke. Sometimes that is what you need. For example, because you want to validate the user input with every keystroke. But sometimes that's also just overkill. And in such cases, Vue has a feature that allows you to retrieve values from DOM elements when you need them instead of all the time. And that feature is called refs. Here's how you add it. Instead of adding this event listener, which you still could add in addition, but which we simply won't need anymore now, instead of having that, you add a special attribute to this element, the ref attribute. Just like the key attribute, which we used with v4 before, the ref attribute is a non-default HTML attribute, so the browser doesn't know it, but Vue understands it. You assign a value here, which is any string identifier of your choice. For example, user text. But again, this is totally up to you. And you can also not just add refs to input elements, you can add them to any HTML element, to paragraphs, headers, sections, inputs, text areas, whatever you need. Now, why am I doing that? Because Vue detects such refs and stores them internally. It basically memorizes that you want access to the input element. And in the JavaScript code, you can then get this access. Here, in this case, inside of the setText method, because that's where I need the entered value. Instead of using this approach, I can now set this message equal to this, and now a special property which is provided by Vue, the $refs property. $refs is a property provided by Vue. All Vue provided properties start with $signs to make it clear that this is a built-in property. This is an object full of key value pairs where the keys are the ref identifiers you set up in your template. For example, user text. So here we can access .userText. And this now simply points at the DOM object for this input element. So the JavaScript object we can use in vanilla JavaScript as well when we got access to a DOM element. So now here we can get access to the full input element. And to show you what this means, I'll comment this out and log it to the console for now. If we now open this console and reload, and then click set text, you see the whole input element is logged here. And if we use console dir instead of console log, and click set text again after reloading, here is the inspectable object. And this is really the JavaScript object representation of this input element with all the properties that has. So this is not Vue specific, that is the vanilla JavaScript object we could use and work with in any JavaScript code. And for example, here we got this value property. Essentially, the object we're logging here is the same one we get access to with event target, which is why we can access value there as well. But now we're not doing this with every keystroke, but instead only when setText is emitted, which happens when this button, the setText button, is clicked. So now we can access value here, and with that, if we reload and I set the text to view is awesome and click set text, this works as before, but now we're not logging the input with every keystroke, but we only extract it with help of that refs feature when we need it. And that's why refs is a feature worth knowing and why you shouldn't skip this lecture.